Hey, Kyla, I'm going to go ahead and open the room, okay?
Yeah, sounds good.
Did you see Carla's message, Jamie? Oh, you're on mute?
I did. So, Kyla, I'm going to see. I'm going to make you a co-host, see if that helps. There you go. Jackie did the same thing for you, but don't feel like you have to be on camera if you don't want to.
I don't really care. Do you want me to or not?
I don't think it's necessary because we're mostly going to be looking at the slides, honestly.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we are recording, so I've confirmed that. Kyla.
Yeah, I got a text from Cassie asking if we were going to do that.
Okay. And we have 26 people here already. That's amazing. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. If you'll do us a favor, if you will pop in the chat, changing it to everyone, go ahead and introduce yourself. So you can see who is here. We have 34 people. We have about nearly 100 people registered. So we'll just go ahead and wait a few more minutes for people to hop on, and then we will get started. Chat is disabled right now. All right, fantastic. Can you tell we don't do a lot of Zoom webinars? Let me see if I can do this. So what we are going to have to do is, if you have any questions, go ahead and put it in the Q&A for us. And then Jackie and Kyla, if you can help monitor, and I'll do the same while you two are presenting. And then Kyla, if you want to quickly edit that slide so we don't confuse people as they hop on. Yeah, I didn't click a button when I set this up, so my apologies. Just while Kyla's doing that, just so everyone knows, this is going to be recorded today and we will post it on our website. A couple of things. First of all, I'm Jamie Reif. I'm the Executive Director of the Metro Denver Homeless Initiative, and joining me today are Kyla Moe and Jackie Hernandez from our team. We are going to be talking about the Unsheltered NOFO, which is new and exciting for our nation as well as our continuum of care, sharing kind of some overview on that, and then providing you with some resources. If during any time in the session you have a question, please go ahead and put that in the Q&A section of the features. And with that, Kyle, if you don't mind screen sharing again, that would be amazing. All right, so on the MDHI website, we're going to talk a little bit more about this as we go through, but you will see that there is kind of a home for both the regular COC competition NOFO, which we are hosting a webinar about next week. So if you're interested, we'll be providing details about that as well. And then we also have a home, kind of a page for the special NOFA as well. Again, questions in the Q&A, we'll all be moderating. And apologies in advance, a lot of this information is from HUD, so we are going to be breaking some of the cardinal rules of PowerPoint today with some of this information. but we will try to keep this as lively as possible. So welcome everyone. We appreciate you being here today at the MDHI webinar and the special NOFO. And I think we'll go ahead and get started. And then, like I said, kind of a recording of this will be posted on our website. So welcome everyone. Like I said, what we're going to be going through today is kind of an overview of the NOFA, talking timeline. I apologize in advance, as HUD has apologized to us, that we are going to be running 2 NOFAs concurrently. This is, to my knowledge, the first time this has ever happened. But today we're going to be specifically speaking about the Unsheltered NOFO, which actually we have more of a runway on because this is new funding for continuum. And then we are going to be talking through some Q&As we've been getting, and then having some closing remarks, and then again, pointing you to different resources. All right, next slide, please. All right, talking a little bit about the role of MDHI. So we are the collaborative applicant for our continuum of care. So if you are seeking funding for this, you will actually be applying to MDHI, who is helping create the COC consolidated application. So part of our role is taking all the amazing, incredible work that is happening across our region and putting it into our actual consolidated application. The next thing, we have a committee that does the project ranking. So as people submit their applications, which we'll talk about timeline and what's in that, they will be ranked by our NOFA committee, which is a community committee. And then we also have applications that MDHI does submit as well for planning, HMIS, and coordinated entry. Next slide. And Kyle, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Jamie. So I am just going to start with the basic overview of what is in this NOFA release. So HUD has set aside approximately $322 million that is available for COCs to apply for. Of that, $267,500 is specifically for the unsheltered set aside. There is another portion for the rural set aside, but we won't be covering that today because our continuum does not qualify or does not have any rural areas. So of this $322 million, MDHI can apply for up to roughly a little bit over 13 million. This grant period, so the 13 million is for a total of 3 years. So that comes out to roughly about $4 million a year. What is different in this NOFO that from the regular program is that this total amount also includes the COC planning grant. Whereas in the program NOFO, we have a separate pot of money for that. So the whole 13 million includes all of the funding or applications from on behalf of the continuum, as well as any MDHI grants that we would be applying for. So COC.
Hey, Kyla, and we have some feedback that just maybe you're a little bit soft. If you could get a little bit closer to the mic so people can hear you better.
Turn up my volume too.
Thank you.
Is that better?
Seems to be better for me, but Gina put in that question. So Gina, if you can't hear, let us know.
Okay. So yeah, so like I said, it's about $4 million a year for over a 3-year grant term. As Jamie kind of alluded to in the previous slide, the project applications must be submitted to us. So because we are the collaborative applicant, and we will go through a process of reviewing the applications, rating them on a scoring kind of criteria, and then ranking them on our priority listing. This then goes to HUD, and that's what they use as a guide to award these fundings. We'll go over this a little bit more detail in coming up slides, but the deadline for this specific NOFO is October 20th, where we have to have everything buttoned up and submitted to HUD. And so your all's responsibility and the applications that you would be submitting are actually due on September 16th. Going into kind of what HUD is using for their selection criteria. So this $322 million is very, very competitive. It's not like the normal annual program NOFA where we're guaranteed some funds. We are not guaranteed any funds under this bucket. We are hopeful that we, as a continuum, will get funds, but this is kind of highly competitive. And this is just some areas that HUD has outlined that they will be looking for in their selection. So, HUD will basically just score all of the COCs. The COs and that's a kind of combination of your all's application plus our collaborative application, the whole package. HUD will then go through and score it. There's a threshold requirement of 50 points as a COC. We have to at least score 50 points as a COC to even have our name in the running. So then based on that, it's, out of 100 points, they're going to score us and then basically rank all of the COCs down. And they'll just start picking and, going from top bottom until they run out of funds. There is they're trying to get a geographic representation on that. So they have set some guidelines on that. So for the larger states that have multiple COCs, only 10 COCs in each state will be eligible for in the running. So, the Californias and the bigger COCs can only have 10 COCs that will make it through. So they're trying to spread it out geographically. There is a portion of this NOFO that they are considering bonus points, and they are basing that on the 2019 unsheltered count. Unfortunately, given the thresholds, our COC does not meet the criteria to get those bonus points. So we are not, it's up to 30 bonus points. We are not eligible to receive any of those bonus points. Some of the, and then this next section is really just kind of breaking down what the collaborative application as a whole will be scored kind of on 4 components. One of them is just that we as a COC have can demonstrate that like we had a fair and process, and that we went through the application process, we did a review and we did a ranking, and they asked us to submit all of the materials that we used for that process. They also look at our system performance measures. And so that was the report that we submitted in, I believe it was either December or February. So they'll look at kind of like how we are doing as a continuum on our system performance measures. This is data that is collected in HMIS and reported through HMIS. There was also a component on our COC's coordination and engagement. And then this is the biggest section. And this is where we're going to get the most points. Is they are asking for the COCs to have a plan for serving individuals and families experiencing homelessness with severe service needs. And Jamie had sent out an email about that, and actually going to turn it over to Jamie now to kind of talk through a little bit more on what that plan is.
Yeah, and I just want to, I think I just enabled the chat. So again, sorry about that. I forgot to click the button. But here's the thing. I just want to reinforce something that Kyla just said. So we are competing nationally for these funds, and they can't award all of the COCs. The challenge that we are facing in our continuum is that because this is an unsheltered NOFA, we're starting like 30 points behind the Los Angeles, the Seattle's of the world, who have a much higher unsheltered population. And it goes down. There's like, again, some COCs are going to get 30 points, 20 points, 10 points, and we missed the 10-point cutoff by like 64 people. So like, and again, that's a 2019 point in time. So had it been, a more recent one, we would have met that threshold. But so that's kind of the challenging news with this application. I think the part that is encouraging is that they are really trying to get geographic representation. So again, like Kyla said, they're going to go down the list, but not award any more than 10 COCs in one state, which may bump, even with those bonus points, COCs like ours up the ranking list a little bit. So what Kyla just shared was the fact that 70 of the points are the 15-page plan. This is a comprehensive plan, and I know 15 pages sounds like a lot, maybe to some people. It's actually not a ton when you're trying to describe our region's like overall comprehensive response to unsheltered homelessness for serving individuals and families with special service needs or with severe service needs. So what we are asking is that, I sent out an email yesterday, and we've been kind of circulating. You'll see more today. But there is a form, and we'll make sure to post these slides. And it's also it's on a slider on our homepage right now. We really need to know the great work that you're doing out there, because there are specific questions they ask about in this plan. And the more information we gather from all of you about the incredible things you're doing, will be really helpful in creating a stronger plan so we can get as close to those 70 points as possible. And so it is like a Microsoft form. Some of the portions may not be applicable to you. I'm taking maybe 10 or 15 minutes to fill out tops, but if you all could drop information in there, that would be really helpful. And then we are going to take all that information and synthesize it and create our plan together. So just appreciate, your consideration with that and helping us create the most, the strongest application that we can submit. Thanks, Kyla.
So that was kind of the quick overview. So for some of you all, probably many of you all, this is your first round of being experienced in NOFA. So as we had posted on the blog, and you can also find it on our website, to get started, really, we recommend that you read the full notice. You read it from start to finish, and you read it a couple times. It is very long, and it is in HUD speak, so it does take a little while to digest it. So we say start there. And then on the HUD website, and like Jamie said, we have some resources, links, all of this posted on our website. We will also have links in this PowerPoint that we'll send out. There is navigation, there's guidance and navigation, but basically the application is submitted through what is called an eSnaps portal. It's not submitted to us, it's submitted to us through this eSnaps portal. So we recommend you read through the NOFA notice, and then you also, if you are eligible and you are interested in applying, you would then need to start by going to the eSnaps and creating yourself a profile and getting you an account started there. And there is detailed documentation on the HUD website on how to do that. This is also just kind of expands on, after you review the notice, this is just some kind of like some points to kind of help fill out the application. So first, assure that you're even eligible. And we'll go into a little bit of that, kind of briefly go into what is an eligible project under this award. And kind of what, are you eligible, and then are your activities also eligible? So that, that is detailed in the notice. And then, this application is, fairly lengthy. And there is separate questions, and to make it so it's a comprehensive of an application and as thorough as possible, is just reading through it and being answering every question and making sure you're answering the question that's being asked. And then there is data that you're going to be asked like throughout the application, so just making sure that it's consistent. So family served, demographics, like any of that information that is asked in several parts of the application, just making sure it's consistent throughout. And then as part of the application, there is going to be some required attachments. And so just making sure that, you follow the guidelines of what those attachments are. And some of them have some very specific dates. And so like, just make sure, and those dates would be that this documentation, supporting documentation, has to have a date between June 22nd and October 20th. So just kind of some helpful hints to make sure, you have a successful application is, make sure you're eligible and that you fill it out completely and kind of follow the guidelines for the application. Going into that, like I said, the eligible project types. So the eligible project types under this specific notice is permanent housing. So that would be permanent supportive housing, and then also rapid rehousing. The joint TH and rapid rehousing projects, which I'm pretty certain, and Jamie, check me if I'm wrong on this fact, I don't think we have any of these in our continuum. So that one, doesn't apply to us, but I put it on the slide. And then here's a little bit of a new section under this NOFO, is the supported services only. So we can, you can apply for coordinated entry, street outreach, and then standalone supportive services. And then the HMIS grants, dedicated grants, and the COC planning grant. So this is where, this is kind of like your first check is, does your program project fit in one of these criteria? A little bit more kind of detailed into that is all projects must adopt and follow the housing first approach. This is one of those threshold requirements from HUD where they have specifically outlined a few threshold requirements. So if we were to pass through a grant and put it and rank it, but HUD didn't feel it met the housing first approach, they could go back in and reject it. And so they do have some threshold requirements as well, and that's outlined in the notice. And that's kind of where this next bullet is. You know, it must pass that eligibility and threshold requirements that's outlined in the notice. We will be doing, MDHI staff will be doing a pass through as well on all applications that are being submitted before we proceed them through the process to make sure that they meet these quality thresholds. And then all applicants must demonstrate in your application, and this is what like Jamie is reaching out to you about, like, what is our 15-page plan for the continuum. In the application, you must demonstrate how this project application helps support or you know, works towards the plan that we have. And then all current COC or ESG funded projects are ineligible to apply. And let me emphasize the word projects there. It's not agencies, it's just projects. So you couldn't apply under this notice for an already COC funded PSH project, for example. But as an organization or an agency, if you have another PSH project that meets the eligibility requirements, you can apply for funding for that project. So just to be a little bit clear on that one, is for the current funded COC and ESG, you'll still go through the normal renewal process on a different NOFO, not this one. And then this grant is any project containing request for acquisition, new construction, or rehabilitation funds will be rejected. So you're not eligible to apply for those kind of costs underneath this notice. Here are some important dates. After this webinar, we will be posting a link and a timeline to letters of intent. We ask you, they're non-binding, it's just a way for us to planning. We ask if you have any intentions at all of thinking that you want to apply for this notice, that you complete this letter of intent. Like I said, it doesn't mean that you have to, it's just that you're thinking of it. It kind of helps us build our resources and prepare for how many applications we're going to have to review and start that planning process. So it is a requirement that you submit a letter of intent if you plan to apply. Like I said, you can submit a letter of intent and not apply still, and we'll post a link to that. It's a Microsoft form again, where it just there's you know, some few questions to ask. If you have any questions about what maybe some of the content is on the letter of intent, you can email our NOFA email, and I'll post that here in a minute as well. Or if it doesn't pertain to you, you can always put the NA again. And then as Jamie mentioned, we're soliciting feedback for our Unsheltered plan. That feedback is due on August 19th. So again, we appreciate your support as we build out that plan. On September 16th, we ask that anybody that is planning on applying, that all applications are in the system on September 16th. This is a hard deadline from HUD. So HUD has certain threshold dates that we have to meet to even be eligible for the application. So that is one that's set by them. So all applications have to be in eSnaps on the 16th. By October 5th, we will notify you of basically your status, is if it was rejected, if it was approved, and if it was approved, how it was ranked, and kind of the order of ranking. On October 18th, we will have our consolidated application, so the whole packet all together for reviewing and feedback on our website on the 18th. In previous years, we have hosted kind of an office hours on that as well. So we'll be kind of sending that out as it gets closer to, here's how you can review it, and here's how you do feedback. And then again, everything, and this is another hard date, everything has to be submitted to HUD on the 20th. We as a continuum, just to be safe, like to try to submit it a day before, only because if everybody's submitting it at the same time, HUD's system does tend to crash. So these are just some deadlines, you know, that are hard, but we try to, you know, try to submit it as early as we possibly can to not do last minute submissions. Here is resources. And again, we'll send this out and we'll have this posted on our MDHI blog page as well. But there is the notice for you to read fully. There, it's posted on 2 different websites. It's basically the same thing. And then there is a webinar that HUD hosted a few weeks ago that we would encourage that you watch, or at the very least to read the transcripts. It's a very useful information and kind of helps break down that lengthy, I think it's 65 pages, the notice is. So we highly recommend that you watch that webinar. If you have any questions, there is several different resources. So HUD has set up kind of a special email that you can HUD. So if you have questions about, you know, eligibility or kind of general overall questions, you can submit it to the special COC NOFO email, or you can submit it to us, which is, you know, nofa@mdhi.org. If you're having trouble getting connected in eSnaps, you can't create an account, you can't see the application, you're having any troubles with that, there is an eSnaps email that you would email them directly. And then again, here is the post to where we will be updating our blog post as we get more information and putting these links on there. And that is really all the content that we had. So kind of open it up for questions. We will ask that you either put them in the Q&A section or the chat section, either one.
Yeah, great question. Do we need to have access to eSnaps to submit an application LOI to the COC? Okay. Hey, Kyla, will you go back to the timeline slide? Because I think this is really important. Thanks. It says anonymous attendees. I'm not sure who that was. Okay. So if you don't have an eSnaps account, first of all, so happy for you, because eSnaps is not our favorite portal. But if you do plan to apply, like actually apply for funding, you will need to go ahead and get one. And Jackie very graciously dropped in the chat the eSnaps 101. So you have to apply through that, like that's HUD's portal. The LOI is simply a Microsoft form from MDHI, and it's all on that post, that page that Kyla just pointed out last on the resources page. And so we are asking for that letter of intent by August 12th, just so we know how many applications and kind of the funding requests that are going to be coming in. Yeah, and then the unsheltered plan feedback due is the 19th. And then Kim asks, how will MDHI communicate the 15-page plan with applicants so applicants can show reference consistency? Great question. We are going to get that done as soon as humanly possible. Make sure you have it. Here's the deal, Kim, and everyone else. On that page, we have actually lifted out of the NOFO for you what the criteria are for that plan. So really, if you look at the PDF that's up there for the 15-page plan, it shows you like what the expectations are. So our plan just really has to say how we're going to meet those expectations. So you can start looking at that and thinking in the back of your mind, okay, these are going to be the expectations that my program has to work towards. So start looking at that now. The goal is to get that, the 15-page plan done by the end of August, so that you all have that about 3 weeks ahead of submitting on the 19th. No, excuse me, on the 16th. So maybe 2 to 3 weeks ahead of time. Great question. What else? Kyla, you just did such a good job. Great job, you. Like at the HUD webinar, there were thousands of questions. So anything else? Yeah, you're welcome, Kim. Not a problem. Yeah, so next, are ESG CV recipients eligible? And can you help explain more the new section on supportive services? Is this limited to PSH projects? Kyla, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Yes, so if ESG CV recipients are not eligible to apply for this source, so for that project specifically, if it receives ESG CV funds, you are not eligible to reply. And then this is a little like a tricky of a question, and I'll try to answer it the best as I can. And I'm gonna pause for a second because I do have an answer from HUD on this, so I just want to make sure that let me find it.
And Kyla, while you're doing that, I can answer an easy one.
Yeah.
Mary asked, do people have problems creating eSnaps accounts? It can be a little challenging. So I would encourage you, if you don't have one and you plan on applying, go ahead and start now. Just because sometimes, especially with changing just preferences, making sure you have the right thing set up, I just would encourage you to start now, as it can be a little bit time consuming. So thanks for the question, Mary.
And I can kind of speak a little bit to the new supportive services, because it is new, but it's also not new, because it's something that historically has been a part of the COC program, to be able to apply for supportive services only grants to help with different types of projects that are more related to like navigation and getting people back into housing, or more general, which is exciting too, because when it was taken away, I think that caused a lot of anxiety for different organizations. And so it is something that's new, and that's why I think there's like a little bit of a nuance still to it now that they're bringing it back for this special NOFO. So if we don't have perfect answers, we can always, dig in deeper, or, contact our local HUD reps to get some more clarification on what exactly that might mean.
Thank you, Jackie, for jumping in. And I think you guys can see my screen, but this is an AAQ that we did receive, and we will post this as well on our website. But it basically kind of outlines, it says SSO services only projects are eligible for funding. They provide services to unsheltered and sheltered homeless persons for whom the recipient or subrecipient is not providing housing or housing assistance. So that would be, so you're not, it would be, you are providing, services only, but you're not also providing housing, basically. So it's, it would be a separate project. So like this next one says, you should not apply for a services only project to provide services to people living in permanent housing. So this, like I said, we'll post this, but as Jackie said, if you have any of those kind of more detailed kind of questions, we're happy, like I said, you can reach out to that special, that COC, special COC NOFA email, or us directly, and we will follow up.
Great. All right, next one. And I'm kind of going between the chat and the Q&A. So Kristen, I see your questions. We'll get to you in a second. Rand asks, the NOFA has a rural component. How might that impact us on the edge of the suburban rural? So Rand, our continuum of care is actually not eligible for the rural NOFA, because this was one big pot of money, but they broke it up into two different pots of money, the unsheltered and then the rural. And our COC only balance of state was eligible in the state of Colorado for rural funding. So great question. And then Kristen says, if we're looking to propose a collaboration with multiple agencies, should we submit one proposal with a lead, or should we submit separate proposals that refer to partner agencies in the proposal?
And Jackie, please correct me on this one, but I think it's similar to ESG, as I think you'd want to submit one application, and in the application, it'll list out who, sorry, I know the answer to this question. I'm just guessing. I'm like, but so it's the same as the program NOFA. You would have submit one application. In the application, it'll ask you if you plan to subgrant it out. And so if you're planning to do it as a larger one, you would have to designate a lead. That would be the main contract holder, and then that person would subgrant out the to the other partners in the proposal or in the collaboration.
All right, and along with that, Kristen asks, if we submit an application as a proposal, can an agency submit a separate proposal for different projects?
Yes. Yeah, that they're not, it's not limited to one, it's not limited to one proposal per agency. So even if you're not part of a collaboration and you have 3 PSH projects, you can apply for 3 PSH projects. It's not, there's not a limit on that.
Yeah, and then Andrew, the LOI isn't entitled the Metro Denver Unsheltered 15-page plan creation. Kyla, we're going to post that as soon as this NOFO is over, right? As soon as
Yeah,
the
we'll post
webinars
it
are-
on our page as soon as this is over. We have not sent that out yet.
Yeah, and we were waiting for this. Andrew, great question. We were waiting for today's webinar just because we didn't want to confuse people around what the LOI was. We wanted to make sure we explained it before we sent it out. So it will be posted today on that page.
I can put it in the chat as well.
Perfect, thanks. And then Kate, you asked the $13 million question, is when is funding expected to be available, or what time frame should the project services be expected to cover in their applications? Kyla, have you got any guidance on that?
Sorry, what was the question again? Let me look at it.
It was basically, when is funding expected to be available, and what time frame should the projects or services be expected to cover? So it's a 3-year grant term originally. And I don't know if you all know, but Kate, it's kind of when they get to allocating it. And Kyla, have they talked about a time frame? I didn't see that in the webinar.
Yeah, they haven't announced that. And, just in general with the regular program, NOFA, like it's usually due in the fallish, and then they let us know in like February or March. And then they work with the grantees on setting the time frame. So I would say, expect the beginning of the year, probably Q1, when we would get the notice from HUD. And then it is for a 3-year time frame. When that starts, we don't know. And I think, just based on us at MDHI, HUD tries to work with you to establish that time frame of when the project would start for this award.
Yeah, and I also think just one of the other good parts of this NOFO is that you're not held to that really strict like 12-month first initial term of your grant. And so it also depends on when you can get things up and running. So if you got a $3 million grant, they're not going to say spend $1 million, in this first 12 months. So there's a little bit more of a runway time, which in my experience is super helpful. So if you take a little longer to establish and, get all the things put together that you need to carry out these activities, then that's available, and there's a little more flexibility there than normal.
And Jackie, I don't know, would you mind looking at Gina's question? This one, maybe one, Gina, that we have to submit to the AAQ, but she's basically asking if transitional housing can be applied for under supportive services. I want to say initially, I want to say no, but this is definitely something that we can look into and follow up.
Yeah, I think that goes back to that joint TH rapid rehousing component that has been also something that's newer to the COC program in the last couple of years. And just because we haven't had any grantees that were interested or organizations that were interested in pursuing that funding, I think we would have to just dig a little deeper and figure out what that needs to look like. But there could be some ways that might be more beneficial than doing a supportive services only for a transitional housing grant. Also depends on, how we're defining transitional housing and where that funding is coming from.
So Jackie, Kyla, this sounds like a great thing to ask. We can submit an AAQ and then post it to the FA. Wow, I'm using a lot of acronyms. We are going to ask HUD, submit it to the HUD, ask a question, which is like kind of the TA from HUD. And then what we'll do is post it on our page. Again, that kind of NOFA page that Kyla's been referencing, we dropped it in the chat as a frequently asked question. So we're going to ask the HUD AAQ about the FAQ to post on our blog, is what we're saying. So yeah, be on the lookout for that, because I see Rand, you're also interested in that in Douglas County. So great question. Esther asking check, if we don't apply this round, do you have any information on whether this will be reopened in future years?
So what we have heard from HUD is that this funding is really funds that they have, it's recaptured funds. So it's funds that they have recaptured from deobligated or funds from other funding that was not spent. They will not commit to it. I mean, they have said there will be a renewal process, but they have not committed to that. Kind of letting us know if this is guaranteed in the future. But there is, Esther, there is other opportunities for funding. So if you don't feel that you can, you can meet this or want to apply this round, I would just say keep up looking at our communications from MDHI, as there may be potential. You know, there is the other NOFO that they just released on Monday. That's the program NOFO, where there is some opportunity for new applications there, and then there will, you know, potentially be some more funding coming up in the future. So I would just say look out, look for those communications on other funding opportunities.
Yeah, great point, Kyla. And Esther, to that point, like we have this, you know, this Unsheltered NOFO, which is, you know, something brand new. We have the regular continuum of care competition NOVA. And then, you know, we do have funding coming out from the state and other sources. So just to Kyla's point, we'll be communicating that out. We'll be looking for all these different funding streams and seeing what really fits the needs of your program as well as your timeline. And then Gwen asked, would funding for hoteling be an eligible standalone supportive service?
Again, I think this is one that we will verify, but my initial answer is no, because under HUD's definition, they consider hoteling as emergency shelter, and emergency shelter funds are not available to be, are not an eligible project type. But we can work to clarify that as well and let you guys know. Safe parking lots. That is a good question. It depends on, and this is stuff that I think, you know, MO especially, we've gone back and forth. If your safe parking lot is considered a street outreach program, then I think components of that are eligible. However, we do have some of our safe parking lots and some of our safe outdoor spaces that they meet the definition of HUD's temporary emergency shelter. Those would not be eligible. So it's really kind of dependent on what, like what you would ask for and what, you know, what your definition of a safe parking lot is. If you, and I can't think off the top of my head, but I think the majority of the parking lots, the safe parking lot, are street outreach. But again, we would just want to check that your program can't be qualified as a temporary emergency shelter.
Yeah, I think it's that, and also, you know, if there's no duplication of services involved. So if, you know, there were a safe parking or a motel where that is being paid by a different organization, it may be possible that the supportive services could be funded under this NOFO. As long as, again, it's, you know, contributing to getting people back into permanent housing.
And then we did have a request for the slides from Adams County. Kyla, we're going to post the recording as well as the slides, correct, on that webpage. Okay, great. So we'll have it all up on that webpage. Feel free to access that. So those of you attending in Adams, on behalf of Lindsay, feel free to let her know, and we'll make sure that those are all up for you all today.
And then I did post the letter of intent link in the chat, but we'll also put it up on the website as well.
And the next question is, what designates a safe outdoor space as an emergency shelter?
There is a, and if Elizabeth, if you wouldn't mind sending me, there is a long definition. So if you wouldn't mind emailing me or and we'll follow up, but it basically is what type of services and what type of actual sheltering is offered at that. If it has electricity, if there's running water, there's stuff, there's like HUD has some weird kind of guidance on what can be considered a temporary emergency shelter when it comes to the safe outdoor spaces. So I'm happy to share that to you.
Great, Kyla. And then Karen asked for us to share the webpage for the slides again. Yep, I went ahead and dropped in the chat the link to where everything will be. So again, that way you shouldn't have to go searching around our website. If you get lost or you can't find the link, if you go to the word updates in the top right-hand corner of our page, click on that, it will take you to our kind of our blog post page. There is a blog post with everything, this whole page related to the special NOFA as well as the regular COC competition NOFA. And then Rand says again, if shelter operation is considered a separate project, can supportive only be used to provide navigation, case management, mental health, etc.?
Jackie, do you know the answer to that question?
Sorry, I think again, it goes back to, exactly how those different shelters are funded and what can already be paid for under those specific grants. And if it's, something that is completely separate, usually there is a way to kind of braid that funding. It gets a little more complicated. And so I think that's where we would need to get the clarification and just make sure that you're good to go before applying for these new types of projects.
And then Tammy asked, since there is a priority to funding housing for those with disabilities, is there a definition or criteria for this?
There is, and I'm pulling it up. It's category, hold on, let me find it. They must meet, paragraph 1 of the definition of homelessness. Criteria, 1 and 4. And so that is outlined on, again, we recommend that you read the whole notice that is on page 9 of the notice. It outlines that, what the participant eligibility requirement is.
Yeah, and I think too, when it comes to the disability stuff, that's just, it can be a little looser depending on the project. I know there's like, certain permanent supportive housing projects that you have to have like really specific disability criteria that needs to be met, but ultimately, it comes down to a lot of it is self-report at that point, and we aren't health providers, and so we don't have to necessarily document all of those things. And for the most part, with the population that we serve, there is already a documented disability that meets the different criteria on that level.
Thanks, all.
Andrew's question, you would need a separate application per project type. So if you guys are planning on doing a collaborative funding proposal for RRH and PSH, that'd be 2 applications.
All right. I think it looks like the questions have, Rand says 1 LOI. Rand, it would be helpful actually to do, Kyla, do you want separate LOIs so that way we know how many actual?
Yeah. It would be, basically what we're trying to gauge is how many applications do we need to review. So if you're planning on submitting more than 1 project, we would ask that you could submit more than 1 LOI.
So Angie asks, are you looking to require a letter of support from any municipal partners? No, we are not. Here's what I will say. You do want to make sure that you're aligning with the 15-page plan, which is going to align with a lot of what's happening with your municipal partners. So just want to be just like making sure, that you're kind of aligning with what's happening locally is helpful.
And Jamie, we're still gonna have to do the certificates of consistency for each of the jurisdictions, no matter what. So
Yeah.
similar to regular.
Yeah, we do have to do the certificates of consistency for the jurisdictions. Fun time. Anything else? Are we ready to wrap it up? Oh, I see a Q&A. What do we have here?
Yeah, so Gina, to answer your question, if you are, it's actively receiving ESGCD funds. So if your grant period ended and it's not, not renewing, then that you would be eligible to apply under here.
And then Kyla, can you go back to the slide that has eligible activities on it? Karen, I want to make sure I'm understanding your question, because this is how many different areas will be available to apply for projects, PSH, rapid reH, or rapid rehousing. I'm not sure. Can you maybe clarify that a little bit, what you're asking? Because these are the eligible project types. Again, how it's working is it's up to about $13.5 million. So if we're not answering your question, let us know. And then Elizabeth asked, would existing funds received by host be considered part of COC to be ineligible for this special NOFO?
I guess the question is the host grant COC funded? So if the project that you are speaking to, Elizabeth, is a COC funded project, just a pass through host, then yes, that would make it ineligible. But if it's from different host fundings that are not COC funded, then it would be eligible. Yeah, and Angie answered that as well.
Other questions? All right, everyone. With that, we are going to thank you so much for coming today. Again, everything will be posted. There will also be communication going out today from MDHI with some next steps and making sure everyone's aware of it via our newsletter. And then just make sure to be checking that website for the slides later today, as well as the LOI, which is due the 12th, right, Kyla?
Correct. The LOI is due on the 12th.
And don't forget about that eSNAPS access. If you do not have it, get in there and start working on eSNAPS just to make sure that that's ready to go. So, all right, again, thank you everybody for joining. We appreciate your time, and please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any other questions.